Aloha and welcome back to another episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. The podcast where, for the first time this season, or no, second time this season, the Packers are over 500. We've got our first NFC conference win of the season. Jordan Love looks like he's found his footing, figuratively, literally, and everywhere in between. And Joe, we are riding high off the West Coast wind. How are you doing tonight?
Well, we've had some excitement at our in our area, not only for the Packer game, but we had a stray cat have a litter of kittens out on our deck.
Lovely.
So, yeah, so they were just born yesterday, so we've all been kind of freaking out that, oh my God, what do we not that we're scared or anything of it. It's just like, okay, now we got to be careful with the dog. Now we got
Yeah.
to be careful coming in and out of the driveway. Now we got to be careful of this and this. So it's been a fun last couple of days. So this game really kind of pushed us over the top.
Always some good news. And on that note, we've just been discussing how we're going to shift the layout of our review podcast. We're going to go to more of the tried and true good, bad, and ugly. But just for a quick recap of the recap, the Packers won today 24-19 in a game that was a little more snug than it probably should have been, save for one play that would have made Brett Favre blush by Jordan Love and some interesting defensive philosophies at the end of the game, but can't complain too much. Get out with a win, and most importantly, Joe continues to be an absolute good luck stone for one Xavier McKinney, and there is no other reason for why he is a perfect 5 for 5 on the season other than the the benevolence of one Overlord Iowa Joe. But Joe, can I safely assume that that is your good for the game for today?
I Yeah, that one for sure is good. I got to worrying about it for a little bit because like, okay, we're getting a little closer here, we're getting a little closer here, and then it's like, yep, it happened, so we're good. But he's really living up to it right now. You talk about bang for your buck. Xavier, has 5 straight games, his first 5 games ever as a Packer, and he comes out with 5 interceptions, which he himself has almost totaled what the Packers as a team
Yeah.
did last year.
And on top of that, adds
So,
a fumble recovery and probably is kicking himself for the one he dropped today, which I joked that it's a golden rule in football. If you unnecessarily jump for passes, it never works out good for you, whether you're a receiver, a DB, and McKinney got bit by that a little bit today. I know it was kind of one of those borderline ones. I think he sort of misread the ball on that one, but yeah, like he looked more like the receiver than the tight end that Stafford was throwing to on that play was, and it wasn't. That's the thing. So like we'll go. I'll probably write an article about this. So we spend all of draft season talking about how Gudikons, the Packers as a whole, they like to take supreme athletes and teach them how to football. But in free agency, they're open to multiple routes because, you know, we joke that McKinney is a guy they probably wouldn't have drafted because of his athletic testing profile. But the really truncated thing about that is they're like, okay, like this guy's a relatively limited athlete, but he shows good instincts. He's a playmaker in college because of his instincts. He knows how to football, but the concern is, does that translate to the pros, or does the deficiency in athleticism create a gap that can't be closed up with the instincts, the know-how, and just the book smarts, the between the ears smarts. And in that case, McKinney kind of falls into the same box as Adrian Amos. And the results, Amos had a great start to his Green Bay career, had a really good first 3 seasons. And McKinney has been better than Amos was even in his first like month as a backer.
well, and what helps him is he's also a little bit younger than Amos was when the Packers signed Amos. So, but yeah, I agree. But it also makes you wonder because they always say that every so often somebody falls through the athletic traits department, whether it's they were suffering an injury during the athletic testing or they couldn't,
Yeah.
something happened where their athlete, because on the plays that he's making, you wouldn't think that he didn't score highly on on the athletic scores. His RAS would be a lot better. But yeah, so happy about that. I would say another good that we're having right now is Tucker. Tucker Kraft is looking like the number one. I kind of wrote him a couple games ago because of the fumble he had, but and it was my mistake. I'm fact checking myself. I thought he had fumbled the game previous to, but it was just the one that he did. So, but he's really stepping out. You know, 4 receptions on 5 targets, 88 yards, and 2 TDs. And he had a lot. I don't know. Do you have his rack up? Because he seemed
Um,
like he got most of his yards as rack,
it's going to be at least half of it was rack because I mean, just thinking about his
or
catches,
not rack, yak.
they're the same.
Why
Like
do I
it
keep
just
saying
depends who's
rack?
talking. Yeah. Hold on. Crap. Hold on. I have the wrong stat page up right now.
Yeah, I got ESPN up, and they don't
I know,
have yards after
but
catch.
if you just think about it on a play-by-play basis, so I mean, obviously the long touchdown, it's about I want to say like a 25-yard pass, and then it's in the air, it's a 25-yard pass, it's a 66-yard touchdown. So do the math there. He had that one catch that he turned like a 2-yard pass into a 10-yard first down play kind of thing. He had the one that he caught short on a like a dump off, and he turned it into like a 6 or 7 yard gain. So I want to say, like, actually, I'm probably shortchanging him by saying it was like 50%. It might be closer to 60 or 70% of his production today was on Yak. So I mean, we spent a lot of last season, and a lot of people are getting into the whole like, oh, like what does this mean for Musgrave? What does the
Musgrave.
all that kind of stuff. Musgrave still has a different role, and that's what we spent all of last season talking about, and I still joke about it this season is stop running Musgrave on craft routes. The quick outs and stuff like that. That's he might break one here and there, but that's not his game. Whereas Kraft, he is the human bowling ball. You saw it on his touchdown. Turns up field, stiff arms a guy. Wicks makes a great downfield block, and Kraft just rumbles into the end zone. And Musgrave will have his time. He is a different kind of weapon, but Kraft is showing the vision of taking a FCS player who does a lot of things well to really well, and it's just good scouting. I know, some will say like, oh, but he was, it wasn't that much of a projection, but again, like we were talking about athletic profiles and stuff, you just don't know if a guy is going to make the competition jump or how long that's going to take. And Kraft has made it happen in basically, he was kind of in and out of, his usage in the offense was really limited to start last season. You and I were saying how they've got to throw the guy a bone every now and then. Don't just let him get run over by, veteran defensive ends kind of thing. Like, throw him a pass to give him something to feel good about himself. Dude feels really good about himself right now. He is becoming a star, right, for this Packers team, and that's what you need when you're a draft and develop team. Is you obviously don't want setbacks in guys, and 20 to 30% of those guys that you're drafting and developing need to become stars at their position. Kraft looks like he's another one.
Yeah, and do you know off the top of your head, did Musgrave? I know he was
So
active, but does
I didn't.
Musgrave actually have any snaps?
No, I don't believe he did. I was trying to keep a really good eye on that. I did miss the very beginning. Well, we all missed the beginning of the game. Fucking Evan McPherson.
Thanks, CBS.
Yeah. NFL broadcasting rules, and fuck you, Evan McPherson. Bengals deserve to lose that game. And I missed the beginning of the third quarter because I had to go pick up lunch. But for my money, it was like 70% Tucker, a little bit of Sims to fill in the snaps, whether they went to 12 or if Kraft, there's a couple plays where Kraft kind of tapped himself out and stuff like that. But otherwise, you're kind of wondering because I don't know if you get ESPN alerts, but I got the one where it was like last night. It was saying Musgrave was going to test it out pregame and kind of determine if he was going to give it a go. Then he was active, but then basically once the first quarter ended, I was like, okay, he is the 46th guy on the active roster today because he has not like they didn't we didn't even really see him get panned by on camera on the sideline. I don't think, and you just never saw him even like I don't think he went out for like a field goal or anything like that. So no, no big concern. It's one of those where you're not putting him on IR, and you just have too many other guys that are more in they're injured. He's more on the hurt side of the fence than the injured fence, but it's the why put him out there if he's could make it worse and is not good to go kind of thing. Because like we said, different roles. Like Kraft has a bum shoulder, but he's still gonna run through you kind of thing. Musgrave, his thing is being tall and fast, and if he can't be tall and fast, it's like it's kind of like what we said about Watson is it's like, okay, you can use him as a decoy, but how good of a decoy is he if he's not fast and explosive when he's out there? So, yeah, that's kind of what my takeaway from Musgrave not seeing snaps was today.
What's your good so for this game?
So, my good is Jordan Love being that guy. Like Ty Dunn had a good tweet about it, how it's like you had the bad from him, but you also saw why this team organization believes in him so much. He has, like I said, a play that is first show like it is the poster child for do not do this on quarterback teach film, and after that is honestly pretty lights out the rest of the game. And really to that point that he threw the pick six. I don't even know the snafu, the Murphy's Law play, whatever label you want to call the pick six. Up until that point, if you want to be totally honest, he has the throw to Reed, which is honestly a hairy play. If you take he's throwing into cover three. If you take the cornerback to that side out of their play, it's a perfect throw. Like Reed, it's in the perfect spot for Reed to run under it. It's away enough from the safety that's trailing Reed, but it's a bad decision because that cornerback is sinking under that throw, and if he plays that ball at 10% better, that's a pass breakup or an interception already and early in the game. But from that pick six to the rest of the game, I thought Love was excellent. And that's that 55% of the game, that's my good for the game, is that you see Love make a mistake, grow from it, move forward, and that's the guy the Packers need. Now you want to see a whole game, obviously, but it was good to see it. And the other good from Jordan Love, he took off for their I think their only third down conversion of the game. He looked healthy, didn't look like he was at all afraid to get hit, lowered his shoulder and stuff. So, yeah, Jordan Love is back.
Yeah, I wish we would see a little bit more. I, I know we're talking about the good at this moment, but I you can still see he's having a little bit of trouble with his deep ball accuracy. Now I'm the one to read. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
I couldn't. That was just a beautiful pass. But like you were talking about, the one to Wicks was a little, underthrown. Had he been a little bit deeper with it, who knows what would have happened.
So
I know you're going to correct me.
I have my thoughts on that. Dusty did a really good write up on it, but you're right. It could be better. Everything else could be better. And at the same time, there's like 3 or 4 bad drops in this game too. The Reed one right after the
we'll
first
get to
touchdown.
we'll get to that here. Yeah.
So yeah, and so that's why like I said, I'm mostly pointing out the pick six and on because the stuff before that was in and out of his control kind of thing. So but like I said, I'm just counting it as good because you saw the bounce back, you saw him come back, and like, yeah, we're in this thing. I thought that 2-minute drive before the half was another good because you had to come back and get something on the board. Good to see Braden Narvison make a kick and not a long kick, but a decently long kick. And he wasn't fading right on anything today. That was above all else, that was the good for me today, is that stuff was aimed down the middle and all. So yeah, so that encapsulates my good for the game.
Yeah, and I liked I liked Josh Jacobs and his what he was doing because he looked, even though he still only had 73 yards, he did get his first Packer touchdown. And I thought he was really running well.
Yeah,
And even a little bit with Wilson. Now we'll get into it a little bit later with the bad part of it, but just the good side of it was Josh Jacobs was moving well. He looked like he was running well. Uh Reed, you can't we'll get into a little bit of him too, but that 53-yard, 56-yard or whatever it was beauty. Jordan threw it to him. He was basically triple covered, and he found the perfect window, and Reed, uh, uh, nailed it. And I know he tweeted later on, and somebody else, I think, was it somebody else said it, but I'm pretty sure Jaden tweeted it.
he
I want to
tweeted
pull
it.
up the
He
tweet
definitely
so I
tweeted it
can.
because I retweeted it. Fuck it, Jaden down there somewhere.
Yeah.
And
So,
because I know, because I
uh,
retweeted Jaden's tweet and said, "This is being socially aware in the positive frame." So
so, but I also think Collinsworth said it, not Collinsworth, Romo said it during the broadcast that, well, Reed's down there somewhere.
yeah,
So, you know, I know the whole argument has been, wide receiver one, right? Wide receiver this. If you want to get down to brass tacks, Jaden Reed is probably elevating himself to
by a pure production
wide
standpoint,
receiver one.
it is hands down Jaden Reed. Like there's you from a pure production standpoint, you can't. There's no argument to be made right there. I know that Watson's got an injury that's not really in his control. Dobbs, that situation, we'll see how that works itself out over the next week or so.
We'll talk about that here in a
Yeah,
minute.
but like you can't you can't say much against the what's produced on the field from Reed. Like most of the big passing plays on the season are Jaden Reed's. And I know that Love or Willis have delivered good catchable balls and stuff, but it's Reed on a lot of, as much as it is a good throw, like today's one, Reed is the one who ran under that thing perfectly and caught it like with heavy traffic in front of him. And that's the kind of playmaking
And it
skills
wasn't a body catch.
what was that?
It wasn't a. It was a hand.
Oh yeah, it couldn't
It
be a
was a hands catch. It
yeah,
wasn't a body.
yeah. So
Well, you know how a lot of them anymore are, pulling it directly into him. He like reached out
yeah,
and caught that son of a bitch.
yep,
So I mean, it was a good all around play from the pass all the way to the, because we know Jordan threw it up there. He was basically triple covered, and so Jordan had to put it in the right spot. Reed had to be in the right spot to make the play. So yeah.
yep. It was a little bit. Honestly, it was that play, not the same thing, but it was kind of like that fourth down throw Love made to Dobbs in the Chiefs game last season. It was kind of that kind of situation where, you know, when you look at the coverage around it, maybe not the best decision by Love, but in terms of where that throw had to go, it went to about the only place it could go for there to be a completion on that play. And, that's why I liken it to that Dobbs play from the Chiefs game last year. So that's my good. And then, not directly Packer related, but I thought Nance was really good on the play by play today. Like some of the nuggets he was bringing up, the whole tie in with, they were saying, they were showing highlights from Super Bowl one because that was at LA Coliseum. And, he's like, hey, after the Tucker Craft touchdown, it's like, there was a guy with 85 in the Super Bowl one highlights, and now there's a guy wearing 85 with a pair of touchdowns today. And then he circled back and did the Packers are the first team with 30,000 points and stuff. So just, those like filling in the dead space commentary was really good by Nance today, and he's always so good. He's one of the better play by plays for my money.
Well, and didn't he point something else at about? Yeah, didn't he point something else out about Tucker where the field that Tucker played on was named after
Mer,
so and so player that also caught touchdowns and
yeah. Well, he was pointing out that Love
Merlin
played.
Olsen.
No,
Merlin
Love played.
Olsen.
No, Love played at Merlin Olsen Field because that's Utah State's field name.
Love.
Yeah,
Love.
yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, I knew he said something like that. I
Oh
was like,
yeah. He's
okay, that's really interesting. But I also thought that I will fully admit I'm very spoiled because I've listened to too many radio broadcasts and I get Larry and Wayne. And those are two of the best guys that you can ever have for any kind of broadcast. So when we have to listen to the national broadcast team, I get very annoyed because it's like, no, I want Larry and Wayne back. When Tony Romo first started, he used to annoy the shit out of me because he got too analytical with his stuff. And listening today, I thought it was a very good broadcast from both of them. You know, Romo wasn't as in depth with a lot of his stuff. He was more general and they showed true bias throughout. And so I thought it was a good broadcast.
yep. All right.
All right, I suppose we should talk about the bad. So
You want to go first, or you want me to go first?
either or,
All
go
right.
for it.
For my bad, it was it was not a good day for the pass rush, and I'm really struggling on what the 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 source of this is, because these are all guys on this defensive line who, to one degree or another, have shown to be good one-on-one pass rushers. And I don't know if, and you know, and the whole thing we were sold on with Halfley's defense is this is supposed to be a very like one gap and attack kind of scheme. The whole premise is, there's less read and react than there was in Barry's scheme, so guys should just be pinning their ears back, not just going wild, but like you have one responsibility and you do whatever you have to do to win that responsibility. And you see plays where like Kenny Clark is just winning off the line of scrimmage on run plays, and then some people say like, oh, he missed the tackle, but I'm like, he's winning his gap, and if the run goes in a different gap, it's like, okay, like someone else has to win kind of thing. But when you watch this team pass rush, it's kind of like, does anyone want to get anywhere kind of thing? And Rashawn's on, like, and so on one hand, these guys have got to win when it's on them to win a one-on-one matchup. And at the same time, I think Halfley has now, he's approaching that point of where he's trying to do too many things to help generate pass rush, because the looping stunts that he sends Edge Cooper on, those are great. When he sends Quay up the A gap, those work really well. But when you do all these like double twists, or the kind where you get you get Lucas looping three gaps over kind of thing and stuff, the reason, and I saw it today, was it wasn't working today because what did McVay do? He knows his O-line is compromised, and he's like, we're getting the ball out quick today. We're taking one step on a lot of plays and we're getting the ball out. And so you run these wide loops, and it's like, that's never going to get there, because by the time Lucas or Brooks or whoever is stunting over, that ball's out already. And it's like, you hopefully get your hand up. And then the other problem is the end on the other side. He's got to contain, because the whole point is that twist action is supposed to win, and your other end contains so that the quarterback can't just run away out the other side. And so I do think that's part of it. But also, like I said, at the core of it, why is Halfley going to a lot of this? I know some of it is his scheme, but the other part of it is guys just gotta win when they have one-on-one situations. And like I said, for whatever reason, it's just not happening like it was the first 2/3 of the season last year. And that's why it's in my bad for now.
And I agree with it. I know I'm going to sound completely biased saying this. I hate the fact, I wish you would have said it more than me, but there's a big problem when one side of the line seems to be the only one getting into the pocket. and that side of the line has been usually Lucas.
Yeah.
And that other side of the line has not been getting any. I mean, they get a little bit of push, but
There's not,
Rashawn just doesn't.
and I know where
Go
you're
ahead.
going. And the thing is, and I was trying to watch that, they still don't play a lot together. Like I don't even think I counted a handful of snaps where the two of them were on the field together. But the overall point you're making is absolutely correct. Is you're not seeing this D line have multiple guys win a rep until like it's late in a game and like whatever, like that kind of situation. Like the sack where like Preston and Brooks split it and Edge also kind of got in there too. But like on a down to down basis, like you've got a couple snaps where Lucas is winning, you've got a couple where Kenny breaks through, or you even had the one where Slayton broke through at one point and stuff. But it's only ever one guy, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying, where it's like if there's just a 5-man protect, just the O line is blocking, only one guy's getting double teamed. Or the center or whoever is a free man, as they call it. Everyone else is getting single blocked, and we're just not winning enough in that type of scenario. And the problem is that most of the guys, the only guy who's really not supposed to win is Slayton. Everyone else is supposed to be a better pass rusher than they are a run defender. You can debate, where Lucas is in his development. By development standards, he might be a better run defender than he is a pass rusher, but everyone else is supposed to be a better pass rusher than run defender at this point, and they're just not winning enough. And yeah,
Right. And and it seems like, and like I said, this could be complete bias or whatever. And I know people are going to call it bias and everything else, but it seems like Lucas is the one getting the most double teams when he's out there. And because I saw it a little bit today where when you would see him have to get pushed all the way around to get back into the pocket, there was usually 2
yeah.
blockers right there that he was trying to get around. And it's like, okay, well, if he's continuously able to get back there, why isn't the other side getting, whether it's Preston or Enigbare or Rashawn or whoever's on that opposite side, they should be able to, with the talent, the strength, the power, and everything that they have, they should be meeting right there at the quarterback. And you're only getting the one side
And
to
this
it.
isn't 2014 Stafford where you're worried he might run for 30 yards kind of thing on a given play. Like, this is
Well,
38
and
year old Stafford.
Stafford was never a running
Yeah.
quarterback anyway.
When he was younger, though, he would get out and kind of move and scoot a little bit at least. But like, he was like
He
Jordan.
could move,
He
but
was
it
like
was like a
Jordan.
Rodgers
Yeah, yeah,
move.
yeah. He was more like Jordan, where it's like, oh, like when he gets up to speed, he is a big guy running with the football kind of thing and stuff. But yeah, like, so, like I said, I'm still trying to figure out, I don't have a direct theory of what's really going on with this. And the only thing I can do every week is just cross my fingers and be like, will this please be the week that they figure their shit out and get it going kind of thing. And, you know, you don't know how long Devontae Wyatt is going to be out. And he was one of the guys who was winning a lot of his reps and stuff. And so you've got to, and honestly, Brooks is a guy who's kind of disappointed me so far this season because I thought he had really started to establish himself as and down the stretch of last season, and he's kind of been stuck in the mud a little bit to start this season too. So, yeah,
Maybe today was his coming out party.
hopefully, I'm hoping so because we did see a lot more of the explosive, decisive play out of him today that you saw last season that you just really weren't getting out of him to start the year so far. What's your bad for the day?
And
Oh,
I'm gonna pile on with you and go with the run defense. They gave up a 102-yard rusher in Kyron Williams, which we kind of talked about in the preview that you were going to have to stop him. And I don't think this is their first 100-yard rusher they gave up,
no.
but it just seemed like no matter what they did, he was still going to get his yards no matter what. Now, I don't know if that was by scheme. I don't know what that was about, but it just seemed like no matter what they did, especially when it got down to like the third and shorts, no matter what
Yeah.
happened, All they had to do was give it to Williams, and he was getting the first down.
So yeah, what we kind of pointed out in the preview episode is like Kyron, he's a good player, but he had been really inefficient thus far on the season. I think he came in averaging like 3.5 yards per carry. And I put that more on like the Rams O-line situation than on him because he is a talented player. And at the same time, you saw where his ability to create space as a runner came into effect. Like the play where it looks like Kobe Woodham has him dead to rights in the backfield, and he just shakes him and picks up that fourth down conversion. You know, obviously you'd like Woodham to be able to make that play, but that is a defensive tackle playing in relative space against a running back who likes to jump cut, and that is a mismatch. You know, some people don't want to hear it, but that is a mismatch. And but I tweeted it, and I kind of like called on one of those COD death screens. The tracer rounds work both ways kind of thing, and we talk about how important pre-snap motion is for LaFleur's offense, all the things it does to create indecision with the second level defenders. Well, McVay is the guy who, he and LaFleur come from the same coaching tree, and McVay is like, well, I can do some of that too, kind of thing. And so that was creating a lot of issues for the Packers defense today. And this is one of those where I'm not concerned about that side of it because Hafley's scheme involves a lot of pre-snap. They shift a lot. If you look, even without the opponent motioning, we do shift a lot right before the snap. You see the defensive ends talking to each other. You see the linebackers pointing things out and stuff like that. So it's not great how it worked today, but it's something I'm earmarking for later in the season where it's like you play, when we play the 49ers later in the season, we're still having all this issue where like pre-snap motion is creating a lot of natural creases against us, or has Hafley kind of ironed out a bunch of that. And, you can't just blame it all on the rookies because these guys on the front seven, most of those guys are the veteran guys. And, Edge got taken advantage a couple times in some of those. But for the most part, it's a lot of the guys that have been on this roster for 2, 3 or more years that were like, can we do something a little more and stuff? So, yeah, not great. And my other bad, I just have one more, is I didn't care for LaFleur's first half game plan. I thought, we talked about it on the preview show. I said, this Rams team is, depending on who plays first, they're the worst or second worst run defense in the league. And Romo kept talking about it for so much of the first half of this game. And, Romo was basically begging LaFleur, run stretch zone, push any run that runs outside the tackle to test the Rams. Because in opposition to Green Bay, the Rams front seven is where all their youth is. And it's, the couple plays where Jacobs creased them early, it was like one guy got out of position. Even on the final, the clock burning drive, what happened on the first play, one guy jumped the gap over and Jacobs is like, I'll take that cutback lane, thank you very much, kind of thing. And so from my point of view, I said it in the preview, I was like, do the Colts game plan. Like, obviously you're not going to do the Malik Willis running part of it, but shove it down their throat and make them stop you from doing it. And that was the part that I was like, I get that you got to get love in the flow of the game, but at the same time, I'm like, you got to win this game too, kind of thing. So I was a little at odds with the game plan early on.
I wonder, and you're more the analyst than I am on things, but I wonder if it was to push Jordan a little bit to say, all right, Jordan, this is your second game back from the injury. You need to step up, get your confidence going. Let's get you some momentum out there.
Yeah, and like I said, that's even more so where I'm kind of like, I get it. Your quarterback situation, Love coming back, the game he had last week and all that kind of stuff. But even more so, it's like, you can do that, but you can also make it easier for Jordan to do that by blitzing the Rams with your run game. And, excuse me. And that's especially true when, like, we kind of talked about where was all the veteran talent on this Rams defense? It's in their secondary. Most of the names in that secondary, you're like, I know who that is. I know he's not who he was, but Tre'Davious White is still a solid player. And you can kind of list the names and say like, okay, some of these guys are pretty good. And so, like I said, that's where it kind of was a give and take for me. But like I said, it wasn't an ugly for me, but it was like kind of irritating me through the first half of the game where I was like, Jacob should have 15 carries at halftime of this game.
For sure, and I think it frustrated everybody. I just wonder if that's what the thought
Yeah,
process was, is try to carry over from last game where it seemed like Jordan started getting his confidence later in the
yeah,
game to, okay, let's go ahead and build on that, Jordan. We need to get you comfortable because we got to go on a stretch run here. I don't know. Like I said, you're more the analyst than I am on
yeah.
this stuff, but I wonder if that could have something to do
I
with
I
it.
do think
Another
I do think to tie it, then there's a LaFleur does get a little too like over smart. He outsmarts himself a little bit. I think, instead of just bringing a baseball bat to this game, he was like, let's try be a little fancy with it, and it maybe almost burnt them a little bit. But luckily, they were able to, like I said, Love was able to pull out of the nosedive and get back on track.
one of the other bads that I have, and luckily this week it's just a bad, it's not an ugly, long snapping.
Oh,
You got to wonder if all the issues that we're having with any kind of kicking has to do with the long snapping.
and
That was almost, yeah, that
Dan
was so
Whelan goes
close.
in the good.
That
He okay. I won't because that last punt he had was me punting, but it was still a fucking mile into the sky at 28 yards or whatever the hell it was. But I know the play wouldn't have counted because the refs couldn't figure out what the fuck they were doing. But when he snagged that snap with one hand, and like, I don't, people need to understand like a long snap is one of the weirdest things to field in football because footballs all have a downward trajectory when you're catching it, just by the laws of physics. The only person who has to catch a football that's going upwards is whoever's catching a long snap. So the place kick holder and a punter. And trust me, that long snap that Whelan caught with his one hand in the back of the end zone, that ball starts off under your chin and it takes off on you like this in an instant. And for him, like I said, it's even more impressive that he didn't know the play didn't count, that he still went up, reached up, grabbed that bad boy and pulled it in. So good on Whelan. He continues to do all the things really well that we say he does. But you're right, Orzik, what the fuck, dude? Like, Jesus Christ.
well, yeah, that play could have been really dangerous because that could have cost them 2 points and possession.
Yep,
And on top of that, that makes you go through and wonder if most of the issues we're having. I don't know about Narvison.
right.
Narvison, I think, is just Narvison. But any of the past problems we've had with kicking, you wonder if it starts right
Yeah,
there at the long. And we've questioned that for the last 2 years, whether it's the long snapper or not. That throws in, okay, can we trust Bisaccia now? Because if he's allowing this long snapper to continue to go out there, and idiot fans like us are seeing how bad this long snapper is, how is it that this guy who's the highest paid special teams coordinator, how is it this guy that's the assistant head coach can't see that there's an issue with the long
yeah.
snapper?
So, or
So, and the only reason it's not the ugly part is because Narvison didn't miss anything today. So,
chicken beat egg. So, yep. And talking about those ugly.
and then,
Oh, did you have one more bad?
no, go ahead.
All right.
No, I think I'm making it ugly.
And talking about ugly, there is one play that stands above it all for the ugly. But everyone is just going to point to the end result of it. But we've got to set up the whole thing. So the Packers have third and long because of some pre-snap penalties again have been just. And what's really bad about the pre-snap penalties is we're getting them on the stupidest fucking ways. We're having wide receivers false starting. That should never happen. That's coming from someone who played wide receiver and never got called for a false start in his. Never had to do up downs for a false start. but So you're in 3rd and 12 because you have some negative plays. Wicks drops. I think he had a drop in there and stuff. And then so you have 3rd and 12. You're on your own 8-yard line, and so I have to watch it again. But I'm pretty sure what Lafleur called was that that rollout throwback screen that we hit on the Bears last year in Week 1 that Jones took up the sideline. I think they were setting up for something like that because you see Jacobs help out to block a little bit, and then he starts to go off the bottom of the screen because Love is going, up relative to the broadcast angle. And Walker, he's the way he blocks it, he's kind of like Jacobs got enough of him. Like he doesn't follow Byron Young or Jared Verse after the initial action on that play. He kind of like shadows him because he's like okay, Jacobs got him for a couple seconds, and you can see Rashid kind of looking at him like that should be good enough kind of thing. And then so Jordan is running away from it, and you see him kind of start to turn like he's gonna throw that rollback screen, and that's when he goes, "Oh shit!" And then Verse bumps him because he doesn't want to get called for like a roughing the passer penalty. Love bounces off of him, and Jordan said it after the game that at that point he should have just thrown it way over, set his feet and thrown it over Tucker's head or whatever kind of thing. But you're in your own end zone. Your heart is racing at that point. The adrenaline is bursting pipes in your brain. And so Jordan's like, I can see Tucker. I know Tucker's over there. And so he's just like, I'm just going to huck it over there. Tucker is obviously not expecting the ball, why I also think it's a screen. And the DB that Jordan can't see just steps out from behind Tucker and is like, oh, thank you very much. And just, and what made it weirder in my point of view is I don't know if you could hear this, but I thought that play was blown dead because there was something on the broadcast that sounded like a whistle being repeatedly blown during the play. I don't know if it was just on my end, but yeah, it was that whole play just looked so weird, and then the end result made it abominably ugly.
I can't tell you whether or not, because there's half the time that I'll hear whistles and it's like,
Right.
okay, but they're still playing. What the hell's going on?
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's all the hits that I've taken to my head or
Same here, but that play from just top
but
to
yeah,
bottom,
I'll hear a whistle and I don't know. So yeah, I get you. So I've got a couple of uglies, and like I said, Orzlik luckily didn't get put into or Orzik or whatever the fuck his name is. The first ugly, and I know I'm probably going to get some hate for this, but Dontavian Wicks. Again, 7 targets, 2 receptions. And I won't put it all on him, but there are several of them that hit him where he needed it.
yeah.
And it just there's no reason for that. And this makes me go back to preseason when we're all asking, why did he only have 1 snap the whole preseason? This is why he needed more snaps. Whether he's playing with Jordan, whether he's playing with Pratt, whether he's playing with Clifford, it doesn't matter. This is why we're seeing. I'm going to put it all on him. Now, I did see a tweet earlier that somebody posted that, well, and of course it's a per PFF, which PFF, go screw yourself. I don't really like you too much, but they said that he had a 23.1% drop rate in college. And nobody else in that draft class had over a 20% drop rate. So if you knew he had an issue with drops, which if you ask Packer fans based on last year, he didn't have an issue with drops. He was the most dependable guy that you could ever have out there. If he has his own issues with drops, what's the best way to do something with him? Work him. Get him the routes. Get him the targets. Not during regular season, but when you're out there practicing. when you're out there in games that don't matter. So again, 7 targets, 2 catches. That's way too ugly for me.
It's rough. It's rough.
Ye-
And yeah, like the only thing I can really say for it is you can't, and I know you're not, and I know you're not, but it's frustrating as all hell. Everyone's gonna make the Devonte Adams comps and stuff, but I will always take the guy that can get himself open and needs to get better at more consistent catching the ball than the guy where everything's a contested catch and maybe he has the greatest hands in the world, but he's just never truly open kind of thing. And like honestly, yeah, and everyone's calling out like the deep ball that Love threw. You know, Dusty already did his Zapruder film breakdown of it. I also agree that whether Wicks keeps running or if how he turned to play it at high point, it's there. You've got to catch that thing, dude. But the one that was worse for me is the drive before where it's 2nd and 12 or 13 again, and then he drops a play. He drops that pass that would have gotten at least half the yardage back, and it's like that's the one to me that's more important. Like the deep one would have been great. Like that would have obviously set the team up. You wouldn't necessarily win the game at that point, but you're in really good position to run the clock out on offense, kind of thing. But that one on the previous drive where you're trying to eat up clock, keep moving the ball, get yourself in position to kick another field goal or fuck it, go for it on 4th down kind of thing. That's the one where it's like, you gotta convert that play because who knows what happened. It goes in the same bin as the one that he dropped on the first drive against Minnesota where it's like, it's not the perfect throw from Love, but it's like if he catches that ball, it's a 1st down and probably a touchdown kind of thing. And those are the ones that I'm like, everyone points to clutch time and what you do on the final drive. What about the plays that are clutch that keep you out of having to make a last minute play kind of thing and stuff? So like they're all important is what I'm trying to say. And you're right, like it's got to get better and you just hope it's one of those. It's not one of those. It's got to get worse before it gets worse. You hope that we're in the worst part and it's going to start getting better already, kind of thing. But the Dobbs situation, Watson's injury, they're going to need him and they're going to keep Love as he should. Made it clear like they trust him and they're going to keep throwing to him. So yeah, it's on Wicks to do better.
I I'm going to counter your Devontae argument with Marquez Valdez Scantling. The guy could get open, but he couldn't catch a cold. So
More in the Devontae one is more in how they get open because Quez was I'm just running the fuck by everybody kind of thing and stuff. And even
I
to
know,
that
but
front,
he still could.
and even on that front, despite all the hair wringing in the regular season, Quez did show up in the playoffs. He did it. He was one of the few guys who showed up in that game against the Bucks. And as much as a lot of Packer fans clowned him while he was with the Chiefs, he made a bunch of really clutch plays and stuff. And all that circling back to be like, it's frustrating with Wicks, but we've also seen him, his touchdown against the Cowboys, some of the other plays he made over the course of last season. These last 2 weeks have been really, really rough, but yeah, like there's time, but it is frustrating as all hell, and it is a fugly situation.
So I've got 2 more
Yep.
uglies. The next one is Packer secondary. Now I don't know if it's as a whole because obviously McKinney has made our good side of things, but the reason I'm putting it as the ugly, Jordan Whittington, 6th round rookie, had his career day today with 7 receptions on 10 targets for 89 yards. They made him look like a maybe not like a top 5 receiver, but definitely like a top 10 receiver with the stuff that he was doing. Now, luckily, he didn't get the touchdown. That went to Robinson, but 6th round rookie. I know they do happen to pop out of things. You have the whole Puka thing, but come on, guys. Carrington was back, even though he's still kind of hobbling around. Stokes, I really thought Stokes had been playing well so far this year.
He had a
He
bad
had
day
his
today.
moments, but he still played well. What about the rest of them?
And I think this is where you kind of noted it already. Like, you're down Jair, Carrington's not 100%. Stokes is. These are, the guys that the Rams have. They're not guys that are necessarily good matchups for him because Stokes is also a linear speed vertical player kind of thing. He's not a change of direction guy. You saw that on the touchdown that he gave up. And so you're down 1.5 corners at this point. And yes, the Rams are down their top two receivers, but they're still putting 3, 4 receivers on the field, and you know their whatever guy going forward is still better than our fourth or fifth guy going backwards, and it's kind of just how the positions play out and stuff like that. So yeah, you just hope that them hedging their bets on Jair is going to play out in the long run, and I do think they're making the right decision because the worst thing you can do is with a quad, not so much the quad, but the groin, is to aggravate that early in the season, and then he's out half the year kind of thing and stuff. So I think they're making the right move. And everyone was bitching last year when Jair was trying to play through the back injury. And like I said, he looked like someone with a back brace trying to like move a refrigerator kind of thing. And so I think they're making the prudent move, but there's going to be somebody, and especially like I said, McVay is really good at scheming up these quick pass combinations and stuff. And a lot of the slice and dice was on that. But as you said, you got to put up more resistance than what the secondary outside of McKinney did today. I thought the two rookie safeties played really well today. I thought Bullard, there was a play late on the Rams' last touchdown drive where they threw the crosser, I think it was to Whittington. Bullard is chasing the crosser going the opposite. So Whittington is this guy coming this way. Bullard is coming over the top, chasing this other guy across the field, and he doubles back and tackles Whittington dead in his tracks, which is like one of the hardest plays to make on a football field. And then Williams makes the breakup on the final play of the game. And I thought he had a couple other moments where he acquitted himself. Like he had that one pass breakup on Tutu Atwell. So I thought the two of them were bright spots for the secondary today. The safeties were solid to good.
Right. I just
The
like I said,
corners were
I
not.
know they
Yeah.
were without
Yeah.
right. I know they were without Jair. I know Carrington is having his own
And
issues. But
Rochelle
like I
got hurt
said,
too.
10
Yeah.
targets. Yeah, so 7 receptions on 10 targets for Whittington for 89 yards with a 31 long. 6 receptions, 10 targets for Atwell. 13 targets, 7 receptions for Parkinson. That's so weird to say because of Parkinson's
I know.
disease. And then Demarcus Robinson had 5 targets with 3 receptions for 28 and the 1 touchdown. Now, while that doesn't sound like a ton, it's the group of players that they
Yeah.
are. If this was like last week against the Vikings and you were stopping, Addison and Jefferson and Naylor and those guys to where you were holding that to that level, then you could say, okay, well, our backup secondary did their job. But this is basically backup versus backup, and their backups beat out our
Yeah.
backups.
And that's where it does. Everything is connected. That is where the lack of pass rush is hurting them too. Like this
It
secondary
is.
is supposed to be helped by what's in theory a very good pass rush. So, but it's still ugly. It's still, well, the results on the field are still ugly. You said you had one more for ugly.
I do, and it's a non-game one, and I think you're going to know where I'm going with this one. It's the whole Dobbs situation. Now, granted, we have no clue what's going on. The way it was being portrayed as sounding doesn't seem
The shoe doesn't fit
right.
very well. Right. Yeah.
Right. But then there's a comment, and I think it was in the Huber article, that they went and checked on, did a wellness check on him.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't sound like he's mad about his whatever, his situation. That sounds more like a mental health thing than
Right.
anything. Is he battling something? Do we need to be worried about him? Because, we don't want these situations to happen.
Right.
And even though we want to know what's going on, we don't need to know what's going
Yeah.
on. If he's having these issues, give him what he
Yeah.
needs. Whether it's a team of mental health providers, whether it's space, whatever it is, get it to him, help him out. Now, if it's the other end and Huber and all them are right, where he's pissed off about his role on the team, which none of us are quite understanding because, he's been Jordan Love's favorite target since day one. He's what, third on the team in
Yeah.
receptions
And
and all
targets or
this other
something
stuff.
like
So
that.
that
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. Yeah. So it doesn't make sense for that. But then, like I said, that one comment where they had to send somebody over there for a wellness check, that's the concerning part of it.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it ugly is this whole situation.
Yeah. And I do think the team is handling it the right way. Like the thing that I keep coming back to is I feel like if it was truly just about like role and disgruntledness and blah blah blah, like even LaFleur I think would have been more irritated, and he was kind of like it was very he was very like quiet in his commentary on it. Like it was still the like we hope he'll be back soon kind of thing and stuff like that. Whereas like you know like with shit Highland Hill, LaFleur basically said like and Amari Rogers kind of to a similar extent like they haven't done the things we expect them to do kind of thing. Like LaFleur he's not throwing guys under the bus, but he has no problem telling you how it is kind of thing. Whereas with this Dobbs one, which like you said, it kind of makes it murkier. And I do think Huber is trying to like because he's hearing it from a source, but he's also trying to like be respectful of the fact that he doesn't for sure know exactly what's going on kind of thing. And so the thing I'll point to is Ty Dunn. I think in the playoffs last year, he wrote an article about how Dobbs, his whole combine situation was really weird. And for the longest time, it was like, oh, he missed it because he was hurt, or he missed, but you read the Ty Dunn article. So Dobbs, he says he got some kind of stomach virus or something like that. And he was just so ill that he like slept through all his alarms on the first day, missed a bunch of the like measurements and testing. And then because it's like a medical thing, his agent was like, "Oh, like don't tell him, like just tell him like you're, like apologize, blah blah blah." But because he was so like fucked up from the illness and out of it, like he missed callbacks, he missed like check-ins and stuff like that. And so he was kind of labeled as like unreliable, a flake, all those kind of things. Like, are there drugs involved? Like, is he hiding things? And and the article doesn't go like down this super dark alley. It was more Dobbs like saying like it was really weird. It wasn't at all who I am, but like it teaches you real fast that like this business won't wait for you kind of thing and stuff. And it's another one where it, like I said, it just really confuses me as to like the whole what is going on here, because if it is a overroll and all that kind of stuff, it's like okay, like maybe Dobbs is just different than the guy we all thought he was. And Bukowski, who I know is, all that kind of stuff. But Bukowski interviewed Dobbs, and Dobbs was the one saying, like, we all understand what this situation is. We're all good football players. We all understand that there's only one football, and there's a lot of targets that are getting spread around and stuff. And even Bukowski kind of said, like, Dobbs had sort of taken on the identity of being the leader of the receiver room and, like, hey guys, like all for one and one for all kind of thing. So even more, it's kind of like, where is this coming from? And it's just a weird situation. And so that's why on the like role side of it, yes, Reed has been the most productive player. Watson is maybe the most talented player. Dobbs is the trusted guy. And like that has its, that's the kind of label where it's like, oh, you're kind of the teacher's pet or something like that. But it's like, and but it's like he had a defined role. The Wicks play at the end of the game, everyone's saying, if that's Dobbs, Dobbs catches that ball, kind of, stuff like that. And so it's on the role side. I kind of like mentioned it on Twitter. I was like, it wouldn't be the first time that a player was told one thing by this front office, and it's kind of like, but I'm like, and even that, I don't want to play that card because I don't know what's going on. And like I said, everything that's been said by all these receivers, including Dobbs himself up to this point, doesn't track with that either. So yeah, it's I put it more in unfortunate, weird, confusing than ugly, but on some level it is ugly because it just came out of nowhere and it really just threw the fan base for a loop. And of course it's led to a lot of the like stupid parts of the fan base telling Dobbs, doing all the he's the least talented, who does he think he is, all that kind of crap and stuff. And then during the game today, right after the Love pick six, it's like, maybe Romeo was right. Like you saw a lot of those kind of snarky tweets come out and stuff. But yeah, it's just such an odd situation. And like you said, the most important thing is if the stuff that Hubert noted about like them going to check on him and seeing, it's a wellness thing and stuff. And like I said, that's where the Ty Dunn thing kind of comes in because, like, is he so in his head about something that, he just needs help processing or whatever kind of thing? Like you said, get him that help, but we'll see. Like I said, this week is going to, if he's back at practice this week, that's going to not answer questions, but, it's going to show that the situation is not in as dark a place as a lot of people went to off the bat when they read the Huber article kind of thing. So, all eyes on practice on Wednesday, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Well, and there's a couple of points that I want to reach on, and then we can kind of wrap it up. But I somebody pointed out that how they always have photos of the players when they're deboarding the plane and stuff like that. I can't remember which player was, but was wearing a mental health awareness type sweatshirt,
Yeah, I want to say it was Brooks
and
or
that really
something.
put the
Yeah,
yeah, that really pushed the rumor mill on it, and that makes you wonder a little bit about it too. But what kind of moves us to ugly for me, and it's kind of the issue that I have with any press organization type writer, all that, is they all have to vie to be the first one to put it out. And Huber immediately put it out with that wording, with that stuff, knowing he had to know that that's what the fan base would turn to. Oh, well, now he's being a diva player. Now he's doing this. Now he's doing that. Instead of saying, hey, there's an issue going on with Dobbs. We don't know the full extent of it. He's not with the team. This is what's going on. He had to be the first one out. Well, Romeo is not happy with the situation. We don't know what's going on. Did you talk to Romeo? Well, obviously not, because nobody's talked to Romeo. So, I mean, that's what puts it as ugly for me. And the problem is that's when you start getting the Antonio Browns of the situation.
yeah,
Is because that starts pushing these players to do these weird ass things because of pressure, because of writers turning fan bases against players. And they don't a lot of them don't intentionally push fans away, but wording it in certain ways pushes that part of fan bases against players. Like you said, you had a lot of them that, oh, well, he's a diva. Oh, well, what the hell's going on with this? Oh, we don't need him anyway. Oh, you're not that good anyway. What do you think that player's seeing? If he's having a mental health issue right now and he's seeing half the fan base destroying him on social medias, what do you think that does for him?
nothing good.
So that's what puts it yeah, that's what puts it as ugly for me, is just the rush to try getting a story out, demonize the whole situation. And if he's having a mental health thing, the worst thing you can do is demonize it. And that's where I put Bill Huber at fault, is get your information straight. Don't come out with a hit piece, and it's not an intentional hit piece, but a hit piece saying, "Oh, well, he's not happy with this." You don't know that. You don't know the whole situation. Your source doesn't know the whole situation. Nobody knows the whole situation except for Romeo Dobbs.
Yep. So
Okay, I think I can get off my soapbox.
yeah, like I said, we're gonna find out a lot about where this situation stands, what kind of waters it's in with. If Dobbs is back at practice on Wednesday, if he's back at practice on Wednesday, you know, not that everything is perfect or fixed or anything, but like I said, that'll be a sign that things were, worked out to some degree and not as bad as it was, not as bad as the worst places your mind took you when you read the Huber article went and stuff. So we'll, all eyes on Wednesday. So we'll see what happens with that. But most important, the Packers won. Like, as much as we spend a lot of time on the bad and the ugly, the Packers did win this game. I don't even want to say they did enough. I think they did a lot of good things today. They just had to dig themselves out of a hole that they put themselves in. And it wasn't just the they barely scored 24 points kind of thing. Like they actually were in control of this game midway through the fourth quarter, and then they kind of were like, oh, I think that's good enough, and then it wasn't good enough and stuff. So always good when you can come out and win, and there's a lot of things you can still work on. So keep it focused here. Ohana Packers, we're going to have everything covered for you moving forward. Check out our website, ohanapackers.org. All our writers are putting out great content. Merch is going up. Please continue to support our Crucial Catch line. Joe's got a couple different, oh my God, words are escaping my mind. Charities.
Right, we're doing both
charities.
Yeah, we're doing both the cancer awareness and veteran help. I don't want to call it salute to service because I don't want the NFL to come after us. But I also want to add to that there are now stickers and magnets over there for that. So if you don't want the t-shirt, but you do want something, there are stickers and magnets over there too.
Like I said, every week at minimum, sometimes every day, Joe is adding shit to the site. Good shit. So please continue to check it out and support the site and support these two causes that are really important. Joe said it last week where jokingly the Kevin Bacon 6 degrees separation for either one of those. It's one or two for all of us that, our lives have all been touched by either someone in the military or someone who's been affected by cancer. So support some good causes there. Check out, please, even though I say this with a chuckle that we're talking about that Twitter is dying, follow the podcast Twitter account at Ohana_Packers. Joe does try to post any new merch releases on there. Our Instagram and Facebook, we're picking up, mostly Joe is picking up traffic on those sites, trying to create or show any new shows, new articles, new merch on those two accounts as well. Follow the podcast on your favorite podcasting apps. Give us a like. Please give us a like and a subscribe. And please leave us all of your comments. We want to produce the content you're looking for. Packers are coming off a win. I know some will say otherwise, but the Packers are 3-2, right back in the race for the playoffs. And it's time for them to just keep making steps in the positive direction. We'll be back on Thursday with our preview of the Cardinals. Go Pack, go, and aloha.